réaction, donc de 1h52, je tiens à préciser. C'est une vidéo par rapport à ONIZOMBIES disant, on va savoir c'est lequel le meilleur entre Dying Light 1 et Dying Light 2. Et donc je l'ai vu cette vidéo. Je ne l'ai pas vu, hein, bien sûr, mais je l'ai vu apparaître dans mes notifications. Je vais la voir avec vous. Donc ce que je propose, c'est qu'on commence de suite. Et on va voir du coup de quoi ça rappelle. Alors je vois qu'effectivement, par contre, mon... Oula, me dis pas que mon... Oh, mon OBS ça crache. Oh, mon OBS ça fait crash. Ça m'a fait peur. Bon, hop là, je vous remets correctement. Et on est parti pour voir. Du coup. Ce serait bien quand même aussi que vous ayez le son. Je dis ça, je dis rien, mais... voilà quoi. Vous avez pas. Bon, bah, écoutez, on va faire comme ça, voilà.
And its sequel on which game...
Alors par contre, je vais me respecter. Voilà, je vais me respecter par contre. Voilà.
is exactly better. Debates from one side state that the sequel is nothing more than its former self, and that Techland is just trying to play catch-up with each update to make it more like Dying Light 1, even going as far as reverting or updating various core aspects to align more closely with the original game raises questions about the direction of development. Is this a strategic choice, a misstep in the development process, or is discourse around these changes simply being blown out of proportion? The franchise has consistently garnered praise for its exceptional gameplay, with the parkour mechanics standing out as a shining feature
vous avez pas les
amongst other
sous-titres,
games.
mais de ce que je peux dire, je vais voir quand même si je peux les mettre automatiquement. Non, je peux pas. Ok, bon. En gros, il est en train de comparer, c'est l'introduction, hein, donc il fait les comparaisons, il dit qu'en gros, la plupart des de Dying Light 2, la plupart des mécaniques qu'il y avait dans le 1 sont présentes dans le 2. Donc ils sont en train de les rajouter une par une. C'est ce qu'il est en train de dire. Ah bah super, maintenant écoute, tu lag.
The distinctive elements, such as characters, infected enemies, grand set pieces, thrilling night chases, and the menacing volatiles contribute to what makes Dying Light so special. And then on top of all that, we have cooperative gameplay, which adds an extra layer to the game's appeal.
La coop est assez buggée.
Question remains, which is superior? Did Dying Light 2 venture too far from the elements that made the original game so remarkable, or is it a commendable step in the right direction? Could the nostalgia and the accumulation of years of good memories and community building around Dying Light 1 be influencing opinions? What exactly is transpiring? Today, ladies and gentlemen, we embark on an in-depth comparison between Dying Light 1 and Dying Light 2. To find out which game truly stands out over the other. Our exploration will span 10 different sections, dissecting each aspect to help us arrive to a conclusive answer. And with that said, my friends, if you have your thoughts and opinions on which game, feel free to comment them down below. But before we do proceed, let's get a quick message from our sponsor. This video is sponsored by...
Bon, écoute, le sponsor, c'est pas que je t'en veux pas, mais voilà.
My friends, let's get back to it now. Now, traditionally in comparison videos like this, one might kick it off by diving into the story or the gameplay first. However, to construct a solid foundation, it is crucial to gradually explore other aspects before diving into the major components. Surprisingly, the most significant disparity between these two games lies in their attention to detail. Yet, before we go and tackle that intricate aspect, let's begin our exploration in the realm of identity. We can begin discussing
du jeu. Donc la différence entre Dying Light 1 et Dying Light 2. On va voir ça.
Dying Light 1 with the slogan right here, good night, good luck. And then if we change to Dying Light 2, it says stay human. And based off of those two slogans right there, that should tell you exactly what Techland was aiming for with the overall vibe of these two games. Good night, good luck hints that there's this crippling world on the verge of collapse. The infected, they're new to the survivors, and they're adjusting to the new...
En gros, là, il est en train de comparer vraiment, c'est le Dying Light 1, Dying Light 2, et là, il est en train de comparer le feed, puisque Dying Light 1, la phrase marque, c'était bonne chance, bonne nuit, good luck, good night, ou good night, good luck, ou bonne nuit, bonne chance, on peut te dire comme ça. Donc là, il est en train d'appuyer sur ça, et pour Dying Light 2, c'est juste Dying Light 2, stay human, restez humain. Pour mon avis personnel, je pense que c'est plus... en vrai, je pense que je ferais pareil, mon avis. Une comparaison des deux, pour savoir c'est quel est le meilleur.
normal and horrors that they currently find themselves in. And because of that, environments are carefully crafted to express a world that is desperate, eerie, and barely clinging on to hope. Techland does a really good job at establishing this world's identity, not only through physical objects, attention to detail, but also color. And you're probably wondering, Oni, what the hell do you mean color? Trust me, we'll touch on it in just a moment. The world during the day is dying as it is, but when the lights go out, that's when it becomes truly horrific, nightmarish settings and environments, and it's basically a death sentence to you if you're out past curfew.
Oh hey.
En haut là, c'est pour rappeler que les c'est pour rappeler que les nuits d'Aigle 1 étaient très flippantes comparé aux deux.
Characters constantly warn you about the nighttime.
Ouais,
you're teased here and there. You're left with a little bit of blue balls, alright? I gotta say. Your first ever exposure to the nighttime in game is
on s'en rappelle cette émission assez dur.
You peek through because you hear something and now see something so horrifying, volatile. You are alone. Here's what you've been waiting for. Good luck. Get back to the tower or you're gonna die. This scene was remarkable, and I don't think anyone truly understood how impactful something like this was.
J'avoue parce que on nous parlait de la nuit, on voulait pas y aller, donc voilà. Je vais le mettre comme ça. Alors je m'en rappelle vraiment. Toutes les personnes qui ont commencé le jeu, la première mission où on sort la nuit, puisque moi je me rappelle, je voulais pas que ce soit la nuit, je voulais pas sortir la nuit, je voulais jamais sortir la nuit quand j'avais commencé le jeu. Quand on m'a forcé comme ça, j'avoue que ça m'a fait un coup. Mais finalement, je l'ai fait. Et en vrai, maintenant, bon, après la d'Aigle 1 me fait plus peur, mais elle est quand même assez dangereuse comparée à celle d'Aigle 2. Je me demande qui c'est.
Can't do that.
But in the sequel, they decided to take things in a different direction at launch. While it has been corrected, the original night that was proposed at launch was not the same, but more on that later.
Oh putain.
Dying Light 2 stays
oh, je m'en rappelle pas comment c'est aussi flottant.
Hints that this is a world that has accepted and, in a way, come to terms with the new world that they're currently living in. A good portion of survivors living in this world were born into it, so they don't know what life was like before the apocalypse. They are now focused on rebuilding society, possibly keeping their morals intact and not losing their humanity both physically and mentally too. And because of that, their worlds and their environments are carefully crafted to express those traits. There's a much bigger focus on humans, their stories, their conflicts, and their issues in the sequel here. The main character, Aiden, he has his internal struggles, and it's the plot that drives the game forward. He's looking for his sister. He wants to feel love and acceptance. He wants things to get better. He wants to see some semblance of hope in his life. For more background info, Aiden, he's a pilgrim. He never really had a place to call home. He's always on the lookout for what's next. When it comes to Dying Light 1, it's more so focused on trying to fix and save the world while everything is going wrong. Like literally everything that you could think of that could go wrong in an apocalypse is happening here. It makes sense. Civilization is doomed. It's over. You are watching it collapse and cripple right in front of you. Your friend dies. Big explosion, go boom. Your sidekick is upset and not really that much into you. The military has absolutely no issue bombing the shit out of this place. Characters have no issue with nuking themselves. Humanity it's over. Cut your ties. We are doomed. The entire game is centered around that and realizing that so much of this is out of your control. But you are trying to save who you can by doing the right thing. That is Crane's internal struggles that drives the game forward. But more on that later. Dying Light 2, on the other hand, is the exact opposite. They are focused on rebuilding, bringing humanity back. Themes of hope, heroism, and good morals. If you want, take the forward. Remember how we mentioned color earlier? plays a big role in one's identity here.
Vas-y, fais voir.
One centers itself around the fall.
En vrai, mais là aujourd'hui, il est excellent.
Properly reflect that. The
Ouais, je suis d'accord.
this orange and yellow tint to it. It's very
Les couleurs d'Dying Light 1 sont excellentes.
others,
Mais le
not so
reste,
much. Orange
Dying Light
depicts
2, on va
danger,
dire qu'il se fait éclater par rapport à
lack
ça.
of confidence and certainty.
Mais,
There's a warmth to
pour le reste, je suis
orange
d'accord.
and little hints of optimism peek through. Like, yes, while the world is crippling, there are still some moments of joy and happiness. Bits and pieces of yellow appear as well, which encourage curiosity and hope. Even though the days are hell, the sun continues to rise and set. There's a more grim approach associated to colors like orange and yellow than compared to, let's say, green and blue, which are more so
Oh,
associated
putain, ouais.
with glory and energy. Green stands for balance, nature, rebirth. There's a freshness behind it. It can
Ouais, effectivement, les couleurs sont très différentes. Je suis d'accord avec ça.
Greed, the worst parts of human emotion.
Je suis d'accord.
Blue represents freedom, intuition, imagination, inspiration. Blue is a sign of peace and stability, which is mainly the color scheme that Dying Light 2 opts in for. Huh. The colors in here, they're more soothing and calming. These colors really express hope and a life to live. And you look out into the open world, it's bright colors. You might have some weird ass trees on top of rooftops for some reason, but the world is mainly trying to convince you that there's more to life in this apocalypse. It's almost peaceful. It's trying to aspire you to do good.
Je suis d'accord.
That I want to kill some zombies. So TLDR on reading all of that. Congrats that happened, or sorry that it did. Dying Light 1 is focused on the fall of humanity, while the sequel is focused on rebuilding it. One is focused more
Il a
so
pas
on
tort.
the infected and how they
Alors, en
created
gros,
the collapse, while
sur
two
ça,
is
je
focused
suis
on the
d'accord. Il précise que Dying Light 1 est basé sur la fin de l'humanité, donc comme l'a dit juste avant, les militaires qui veulent tuer du coup les habitants de Harran, etc. et autres. Et là, c'est totalement différent du coup. Je suis totalement d'accord. Dying Light 2, c'est une reconstruction. Je suis d'accord.
people and their conflicts. So depending on what you're looking for within your zombie game, you should know exactly this before heading into it. Well, that's section 1. I haven't even dived. Oh, I got a hole in my sock. I haven't even dived into the other aspects yet. Holy shit, this is going to be a long video, so do like and subscribe if you haven't already. And with that said, let's transition to music. Now, why music, you may ask? Because...
Alors, je tiens à préciser, je donne mon avis avant d'écouter le sien et avant que je sois influencé. Il y a des musiques sur Dying Light 2, elles sont bien. Mais, la musique Horizon de Dying Light 1, je vais vous la faire écouter de suite. Regardez. Hop, hop. Oh mince, super. Et je sais pas écrire à l'aide. Horizon Dying Light. Regardez, juste écoutez. C'est basique. On entend cette musique, on sait d'où ça vient. Voilà, instant. Instant. Je vous passe par contre, je vous passe des musiques Dying Light 2, c'est tellement l'inverse. Mais bon, on y peut. Je préfère en tout cas celle de Dying Light 1 à celle de Dying Light 2.
So, in gaming, music possesses the extraordinary ability to transform even the smallest moments into unforgettable experiences. Think of the Warthog run in Halo 3, an exceptional track that elevates the impact and satisfaction as you strive to escape the world's impending doom. The pairing of music with gameplay and on-screen events can swiftly shape mood and tone, creating a profound impact. In the realm of gaming music, two forms exist. Adaptive music, also known as dynamic, and then we have static. Adaptive music is composed in a way that reacts to what is occurring on screen within a game.
Okay.
For example, a track could be changing depending on how you block, attack, and how many enemies are on screen. The music technique in Dying Light 2 is a powerful tool, prominently utilizing adaptive music. As you embark on a parkour section, the music gradually builds, picking up the pace with your movement.
Je suis d'accord.
The longer and more intricate your parkour run,
alors la musique prend en compte avec le parcours, c'est vrai.
Empowerment, like you're working towards a notable goal. Exploration, combat, and low health situations each have their own distinct tracks, creating an immersive experience. The seamless flow between combat and exploration is particularly noteworthy. It adds an extra layer of immersion. The real-time adaptation of music to your in-game actions is nothing short of incredible, and it's showcased here in Dying Light 2, and it is beautifully done.
Oh là là. C'est vrai. Putain, j'avoue, parfait. Non, j'avoue, parfait. Je suis d'accord.
Contrasting this, many games like Dying Light 1, they opt in for a more static approach. So in static music, there's predetermined moments that trigger specific tracks. During a level or a boss fight, for instance, once the situation concludes, the music stops and the game progresses. And while static music, it has its merits, adaptive music, as showcased in Dying Light 2, has the unique ability to make players feel more engaged and alive by dynamically responding to their actions occurring on the screen. Dying Light 2 really holds something special here in terms of musical scores, especially in certain moments of the game. They would not be nearly as memorable if it wasn't for the brilliant score. When it comes to the actual themes and soundtracks of these games, they are exceptional.
Je suis d'accord, mais Dying Light 1, toujours supérieur.
With the game's core
Toujours
identity,
supérieur.
everything can fall apart if you have contrasting tones. Dying Light 1's music is focused on despair. It makes the player experience the crippling world of Haran, the haunting beauty of a forgotten civilization, and the now relentless brutality of the undead. The music becomes more than a backdrop. It's an emotional conduit, inviting players to feel the weight of the world that they navigate in. In Dying Light 2, the music takes on a transformative role, shifting its focus from despair to a beacon of hope. The soundtrack
par contre, les musiques utilisées derrière, je suis pas fan. Pas vraiment.
The resilience of humanity. Players parkour and explore. They will listen to music that's more uplifting, that has an emphasis on a brighter future or rebuilding a better one. The music becomes a driving force, empowering players to navigate through challenges ahead.
Ouais, ça on peut dire merci au français qui a travaillé sur le jeu. Parce que c'est un français qui a travaillé sur la musique du jeu. Je le précise au cas où.
Soundtracks and music contribute so much to the overall gaming experience that it crafts a unique identity that resonates with players on a personal level. My God, I love music. Jesus Christ. Now, let's go ahead and
J'avoue qu'il y a des musiques Dying Light 2, elles sont meilleures.
attention to detail. Let's specifically focus in on weather systems and lighting.
Okay.
I think this is one area where Dying Light 2 is incredibly lacking, and that is a compelling and engaging weather system. And all of this goes hand in hand to making a world and its environment feeling alive and not dead and dull. And when it comes to attention to detail, this is where
Dying Light 1 éclate en termes de détails.
start to shine through. In the original Dying Light, you could stand there and simply watch the sunset. You can see time change, and you could see the sun move from one side of the map to the other. It's actually quite dynamic and properly working, and overall quite impressive for a game that came out almost 9 years ago. But when you compare that to Dying Light 2, that simply doesn't exist. And this is where you can start seeing examples of the developers cutting corners on their final product. The skybox literally filters through like 7 to 10 different static slideshow images for their lighting system in the game. There's nothing dynamic about this. It's so bizarre.
I'm here to chase you, by the way, to stop you from like doing all this madness.
Ah ouais, ça... ça est vraiment arrivé à aussi sa race, mais non, j'y crois pas.
5-minute video tackling this subject that I'll link down below. The day and night cycle, it just doesn't make sense, and you can tell that it's lazily done. It gets to a point where you can have 2 suns in the open world. What's going on here?
Deux soleils, ah ouais, d'accord.
Slowly fades in and remains in the same position until that same sun disappears, and then shit, Where the hell is the sun? Oh, it's in the middle of the sky now?
Bon, ça
Why?
c'est petit
We
détail,
didn't
ça
see it
effectivement.
move, and then it just rinses and repeats. Techland
C'est
developed
vrai.
this to have set static positions in your open world, rather than having a dynamic sun
Oh.
that moves from one side of the map to another. This is what they opted in for. Just subtle attention to detail like this
On me
really
demandait pas
goes
ce
a long
Discord.
way in dissecting how much love and care this sequel got. Now, I understand that you may think this is a nitpick or something extreme that I'm blowing out of proportion. To that, I have to say that these seemingly minor details contribute significantly to the overall experience. And unfortunately, there are several instances where Dying Light 2 falls incredibly short in attention to detail. These collective
C'est
shortcomings,
vrai.
it just makes the game feel
Dying Light 1
somewhat
est meilleur en termes de
disjointed
détails.
and peculiar. Like, it's no secret that Dying Light 2 is constantly updating in order to make it better, but when there's these fundamental differences between the first game and the second game, is it even worth investing more time and effort into things like this? It's also worth noting that the moon is the exact same way. That bitch just sits there in the exact same spot for the entire night. Whereas in Dying Light,
Elle reste
1,
là?
we had some movement.
Mais
Not only
merde,
we
je savais
had
pas
movement,
ça.
but we had clouds that would get in the way, and when it rains, it would react accordingly, and the nighttime would be pitch black. Ow! Charlie horse! When it comes to dynamic weather in both games, it's not really a thing. Both games will randomly have sections where it's raining, sunny outside, dark and gloomy. You just won't see a change in real time. Most of the time it happens
C'est
on the
vrai.
back end. So if you get into a loading screen while it's sunny, it could change to rain and thunder once you're out of it. Rain in general feels better in Dying Light 1, and it really adds to the overall
Pourquoi ils
atmosphere
ont mis sur le
the game
coffre?
was trying to sell. Despite a world that is on the verge
Donc c'est avec ça que je posais.
collapse, this actually feels quite relaxing and calming to just sit here and overlook the environment. It has a soothing presence to it. The ambience that this game has alongside its music and sound design is incredible here. The rain in Dying Light 2, it's just not up to par. They don't do it as
C'est
well
vrai.
as I would have liked to have seen in the sequel. There are times where you can't even tell that it's raining, or there are times where you're just fighting the game to be able to see what's happening in front of you. The ambience
Bah tu me diras, c'est comme dans la vraie vie
feels
quoi.
like something is missing. As discussed, a majority of that reason is just how static Dying Light 2 is over its counterpart. It almost feels like they had these really ambitious ideas. Honestly, they're not even ambitious. It just feels rushed, like Techland wanted to put more time into certain elements, but simply didn't have the time to do so. So they cut corners. I also think when it comes to the ambience in
Effectivement.
Dying Light 2, it just feels like it's constantly reminding you that you are in fact playing a video game. Like just doing a parkour run, you're hit with various
C'est vrai.
points and markers despite your HUD being completely off. With Dying Light 1, it just feels like you're fully immersed into the zombie experience.
Je vous
As I
confirme,
mentioned
essayez
earlier,
vraiment.
The disparity in attention to detail
Vraiment
stands
essayez.
out as the most prominent distinction between these two games. Without a doubt, when it comes to this aspect, Dying Light 1 emerges as the front runner, and I'm going to tell you exactly why. There's an unmistakable sense that Dying Light 2 took shortcuts, and it lacks the same
La
charm,
physique, oui, je m'en
mark, and
rappelle,
attention
bordel.
that defined the original. For this one, I also want to point out another video from 80s Kid Grown Up. Bro, he
Oh,
should have
mon
just done
Dieu.
this video. He did an incredible job with explaining some of the reasons that we're going to go over here too. Number 1, weapon degrading. When examining the weapon
C'est vrai.
mechanics, a notable contrast
Attends, on est à combien?
arises between Dying Light 1
Ah ouais,
and
attention au
Dying
détail, putain,
Light
il a
2.
fait une
In
grosse
the latter,
section.
there's a notable absence of wear
Ça,
and
c'est
tear
vrai.
on weapons over time. Regardless of how much you swing away, your weapon appears identical to one of full durability. This stands in stark contrast to the intricate system in Dying Light 1.
Ça, je me rappellerai, c'est vrai.
Gradual deterioration of a weapon with each use. Not only does
C'est
the
vrai.
weapon visibly show signs of wear and tear, but when you repair it, it results in a distinct and renewed appearance. Unfortunately, this
Je me
nuance
rappelle ça,
feature
ouais.
seems to be
C'est vrai.
absent in Dying Light 2, contributing to the perception that some of the intricacies and attention to detail present in the original game might be overlooked in the sequel. Number 2, safe houses and metro station. When it comes to safe houses in Dying Light 2, a very problematic
copier-coller.
pattern emerges.
Copier-coller.
All
Copier-coller.
share a strikingly similar setup. Particularly, the metro station safe houses presents a noteworthy drawback. Each underground location lacks distinctiveness, making it a challenge to orient oneself without resulting to frequent pausing and
Ouais, je confirme. Ils ont fait, la map est beaucoup de copier-coller.
Dying Light 1 excels in this aspect. Nearly every single safe house in the first installment boosts a unique.
Après, voilà, aux attentions détails, ils ont vraiment fait beaucoup de trucs sur Dying Light 1. Ça, j'ai pas le dire le contraire. Voilà, faut pas se mentir.
Adds a layer of richness and diversity, which is just missing from the sequel here. Number 3, GRE, quarantine zones, GRE buildings.
C'est un copier-coller.
In Dying Light 2,
C'est un copier-coller d'un copier-coller, je veux rien savoir.
adds a layer of engagement to the gameplay. It allows players to earn rewards and inhibitors for character progression. However, the issue lies in the repetitive nature of these locations. Each GRE building seems like a carbon copy of the previous,
littéralement.
with a repetitive cycle of progressing through identical floors.
Ils ont modifié 3 trucs, mais c'est les mêmes trucs.
Over and over. This contrasts sharply with Dying Light 1, where
Ça, je me rappellerai.
zones, while serving a similar purpose for endgame progression,
C'est vrai que je me rappelle.
a distinct difference in detail and variety. The original game invests more time in crafting diverse locations, contributing to a rich and varied game identity, a quality that feels somewhat lacking in the sequel here. It's evident that Dying Light 2 may have fallen into the trap of adhering too closely to the checkboxes of most modern design, repeatable challenges,
vraiment ça de Ubisoft,
trendy
putain.
elements like windmills. This adherence to industry norms may have inadvertently led to a sacrifice of creativity and originality that defined the first installment, leaving players with an experience that, despite its merits,
Ça, je me rappelle.
feels somewhat lacking.
C'est les hommes de quarantaine.
Number 4, random encounters. In the
Les rencontres, alors,
world of Dying Light,
alors, je vais le faire taire 2 secondes. Faut en parler. Je pense qu'il va le dire, hein. Je le dis tout de suite. Il a déjà dit dans d'autres vidéos, mais c'est mon avis à moi. Alors, le nombre de personnages que j'ai entendu dire « Oh non, je me suis fait piquer par une abeille. Oh, alors ça, c'est les mêmes. » Il n'y a pas de changement. T'en croises tout le temps. C'est tout le temps les mêmes. D'accord ? Dying Light 1, c'était rare de rencontrer des survivants. Et t'en rencontré en général, c'était soit ils avaient besoin d'aide, ils étaient au même endroit et c'est les mêmes qui demandaient à chaque fois, mais ils ne bougeaient pas. C'est ça, soit c'est des ennemis, ils apparaissaient au même endroit, mais c'était un peu random. C'était assez rare. Voilà. C'est la seule différence. Et en gros, bah, pour dire, c'est que ça se passait pas à chaque fois de la même façon. Chaque rencontre était différente.
Variety of random encounters that breathe life into the post-apocalyptic streets here. Dying Light 1 excels in this regard, offering diverse scenarios like
ça, je m'en rappelle. Voilà, ça aussi, je m'en rappelle.
Tense hostage situations, clashes with
ça, je m'en rappelle, voilà, comme j'ai dit, hein.
Intense demolisher battles, and the charming appearances of traveling merchants who can give you some goodies.
Ça, bordel! Ça, j'aurais aimé qu'ils soient dans Dying Light 2, mais je pense pas qu'ils en rajouteront. Les marchands qui se baladent, vous savez, quand vous vous baladez dans Dying Light 1, à des moments, vous pouvez avoir une espèce $1 bleu sur la map de Dying Light 1 qui apparaît en haut de la minimap, et vous pouvez d'un coup, genre, prendre des bonnes armes qui n'apparaissent qu'avec eux, etc. Ça, j'avoue, c'est un bon truc. Ah, merci Laco. Il y a tellement de trucs.
Back to the safety of the tower for some extra rewards. That adds a layer of depth to the experience. Dying Light 2 seeks to build on this foundation by expanding the scope of random encounters, and this is something that they've added into the game over time with more and more updates. We have random encounters such as the Plague Bearers, Tyrants, Hives, and much more. Prior to the release of those updates, it may have been incredibly lacking. Going from Dying Light 1 to Dying Light 2, a noticeable shift occurs, focused more on human interactions rather than the infected. And while the initial charm of scenes like survivors cook and stew or engaging in various activities adds a unique touch, the novelty begins to wear thin over time. repeatedly witnessing the same funeral or
C'est les mêmes, voilà, comme je l'ai dit. Il est en train de le répéter. Voilà, oh bah tiens! Je vous laisse dans les commentaires que je n'ai pas vu la vidéo. Voilà. Voilà. Sachez-le, l'animation est buggée. Hein. C'est-à-dire qu'ils peuvent bouger et dès que vous arrivez, vous voyez l'animation se lancer. Littéralement.
Now, let's go ahead and dive into the gameplay section, where we'll explore various elements including physics, ragdolls, and other
le ragdoll de les gars sont imbattables, je veux rien entendre. D'accord.
Let's kick off our exploration with gameplay, honing in on the main attraction. The parkour, a truly unique element, especially when the original
je vais parler français.
There wasn't really
je vais parler français, les potes, et fact. Le parcours de Dying Light 2 éclate, mais de loin, très très loin, celui de Dying Light 2. Celui de Dying Light 1, pardon. Très bien. La physique par contre de Dying Light 1 est excellente. Voilà, ça par contre je dis pas le truc, c'est vraiment le seul point où il détruit Dying Light 2. Dying Light 1. Les ragdolls, la physique. C'est deux trucs qui détruisent Dying Light 2. Oh, putain, avec les mouchés, j'avais galéré un peu à parler.
Other games out there like this. Like, yes, there were other games like Assassin's Creed, but that franchise took a nosedive. 1 minute, I'm eagle diving into a haystack. The next thing I know, I'm beating the shit out of George Washington. Assassin's Creed went downhill a little bit, except for that absolute gem that is Black Flag. Honestly, I could talk about Black Flag for hours. Might make a video about it one day. However, in 2015, nothing was really on the market that offered a first-person parkour experience quite like Dying Light. We did have Mirror's Edge, but that was more so focused on puzzles rather than with Dying Light, where it seamlessly blended excellent melee combat with exceptional parkour. Setting it apart from most games on the market, but also this sea of zombie games that were just flooding out there trying to capitalize on the genre at that time. Mirror's Edge attempted combat, but it was abysmal to say the least. The gunplay is so rough, and frankly, I would rather take my car, drive it into a river, lock the doors, put the child locks on, and go in the back seat. It's that bad. Dying Light's parkour was satisfying.
On redit vraiment que le combat sur Mirror's Edge était éclaté, mais c'est pas si grave.
Dying Light embodied those words, offering a wide range of movement options.
Je suis d'accord qu'en 2015, on n'avait pas beaucoup de jeux à part Mirror's Edge en termes de parcours. C'est ce qu'il a dit avant. Hop là, on reprend, désolé, on était parti un petit moment.
The journey from point A to point B was an adventure every single time, and over the years it expanded with extra additions like the Doom Buggy. Dying Light 2 built on this foundation, introducing a more complex parkour system, and it also has the return of the grappling hook, and this time, the newest addition, the paraglider. It is awesome. The world is designed to complement this system. It's so much more vertical, with massive skyscrapers. You can climb up that. The introduction of verticality in Dying Light 2 brings a fresh perspective to the parkour system, offering a dynamic experience that was absent from the original. The ability to freely navigate the vertical landscape adds a breathtaking dimension to the gameplay, allowing players to explore and traverse the environment with a newfound sense of freedom. This innovation enhances the overall parkour experience, contributing to this game's distinctiveness and reinforcing its position as a notable improvement over its predecessor. Despite the parkour's complexity, Dying Light 2's parkour is so much more accessible, with the recent Good Night Good Luck update refining player control, making it tight and quick, addressing the previous criticisms of a floaty parkour feeling. The sequel's parkour represents a huge improvement, and it's a testament to the developers' commitment to refining the player's experience. In Dying Light as a whole, parkour takes center stage, and the overall experience is deeply influenced by factors such as location and time of day. The parkour mechanics stand as the pinnacle of the Dying Light series, and they are undoubtedly a key reason players gravitate towards these games. The complexity and fluidity of the parkour system, particularly in the sequel, showcases Techland's innovation and commitment to refining gameplay mechanics in the game industry. This is what makes it stand out. This is what separates Dying Light apart from other
titles. En gros, ils disent que les parcours de Dying Light 2, c'est ce qu'on retient vraiment de la part de ces deux jeux-là. Et je suis d'accord.
An integral aspect of the gameplay, solidifying its position as a standout feature in the series. Now, location. Dying Light 2 introduces two primary locations.
Ouais, alors les lieux.
In Old Villador. The central loop stands out as that vertical playground that we discussed in the previous section. It provides an expansive and engaging open world sandbox for players to freely explore.
Je l'ai pas trop aimé, hein.
While the setting excels in
La présentation, j'ai plus préféré les parcours, j'ai plus préféré, on va dire, les maps de Dying Light 1 à Dying Light 2. Alors, je préfère m'expliquer. La map de Dying Light 2 est bien en soi, on peut bouger, c'est bien animé avec le parcours, mais le souci c'est que c'est trop copier-coller. C'est beaucoup trop copier-coller. Alors que Dying Light 1, t'as 2-3 copier-coller, et après c'est que fait manuellement, c'est pas, il y a rien de copier-coller, voilà. C'est tout, c'est trop sympa. Merci la connexion.
And the overall repetitive nature of this environment. We recently discussed in our attention to detail section, so you know exactly how I feel about what this actual world encompasses. But strictly looking at it as a parkour playground, it has a lot to offer. Despite these drawbacks, the central loop remains a true standout. As for Old Villador, it is arguably one of the least captivating locations in the entirety of Dying Light.
C'est vrai.
It lacks the vibrancy and appeal found in other areas. The absence of the verticality that works so efficiently in the central loop contributes to a mundane and dull atmosphere. Upon closer inspection, the buildings in this area appear nearly identical, giving off a sense of repetition. Old Villador, it shares similarities with the issues found in the safe houses and the GRE buildings.
C'est vrai, comme je l'ai dit à l'instant.
Size over richness and variety. It seems that Techland opted for a location that,
et c'est pour ça que la map des Sims est excellente, hein, pour le peu qu'on a vu.
Found in the more compelling parts of the game world. For any players of Dying Light 2, I think I speak for like 90% of us, but when it comes to post-game, end-game, we spend a majority of our time in Central Loop. We may go back to Old Villador to visit a vendor or two, or maybe grab a bounty or collectible, but there is nothing refreshing when comparing it to the Central Loop. I will say, it is a great way to get your grasp on the parkour system before you start tackling more complex skyscrapers with multiple floors, ropes, yada yada yada. In Dying Light 1, we were treated to two locations, the slums and Old Town. Old Town, with its more city-like environment and crammed streets, brings a great diversity to the game. Navigating through a city with populated zombies.
Regarde, il y a rien qui est similaire. C'est pour ça que la map est plus petite, hein, mais elle est meilleure. Voilà. Certes, la map est plus petite, mais vous pouvez faire pas mal de choses. Comme il dit ONIZOMBIES.
I do hold a special bias for the slums. It holds a special unique place in my heart. The slums serve as the starting point for the Dying Light journey, marking the place where so many players embarked on their adventure and became fans for years to come. There's an undeniable charm and nostalgia associated with this location.
C'est vrai.
Especially considering it's where players first experienced the exhilarating thrill of parkour of a game in this nature. Despite lacking the same verticality showcased in Dying Light 2, the slums in Dying Light 1 stands out as the perfect location. Like I said, biased. It compensates for its vertical limitations with the sheer quality invested in the design. The presence of hordes of zombies in Dying Light 1 was incredible, and that's something that is absent in the sequel. This ongoing threat not only added to the enduring.
On croit pas beaucoup trop, pas énormément de zombies, mais je suis d'accord. Dans le 1, on en croise beaucoup plus que dans le 2, tout simplement.
The slums is where we first experienced the nighttime. Now, this is where things are going to get more controversial. Now, when Dying Light 2 launched, it altered the nighttime experience by adapting a more arcade-like and less realistic approach in favor for player accessibility. This change inadvertently diminished the unique charm of the original. Dying Light 1, it was all about those intense and terrifying nights. Dying Light 1 began those horrific night times, which became integral.
Là, il parle vraiment de la nuit.
Identity. While the nighttime experience has improved in Dying Light 2's Good Night, Good Luck update,
faut le dire, c'est que l'amélioration a eu lieu, mais celle de Dying Light 1 est toujours aussi effrayante.
In the original, where players fearfully navigated to the tower. It just lacks the same charm and intensity in the sequel. In Dying Light 1, the initial impression of night was so strong to players that they actively avoided it. A sentiment that cannot be fully replicated because of the arcade-like feeling in Dying Light 2 despite recent updates. Nights became a heart-pounding test of survival, and from day one, the original understood the assignment. The game's chilling atmosphere during nighttime.
C'est vrai. L'atmosphère de nuit du 1 et du 2, c'est deux choses différentes. Ça, c'est vrai.
All around a time of day. But unfortunately, that was lost in the sequel. In the sequel, various elements that worked so well in the original were removed, such as roaming volatiles on the rooftop.
Les banshees qui se baladent la nuit, bordel. Ça, c'est excellent.
When you did encounter them, it just felt kind of forced and stiff. Friend of the channel, AussieGG, did an incredible video outlining the differences between the dynamic nights in the original versus the static ones found in the sequel. Techwine's creative decisions, it made the threat and danger of nighttime completely lost. That's how it was at launch, and while it has been reworked entirely in updates to include certain elements that worked in the original, there are often times where it doesn't feel like you're as engaged about the potential dangers at night. For the longest time, color, I know we're back on the topic of color, but the visual representation of darkness during the night in Dying Light 2 was overly bright. It failed to convey a genuine sense of nighttime, despite, you know, the sun disappearing, the moon being right there.
Je me rappelais pas trop de ça, personnellement.
Techwine did recognize this concern and made updates to
voilà, en fait,
visuals.
ça qui est bien, c'est que ils ont fait pareil pour Dying Light 1, c'est que la plupart des Dying Light qu'ils ont fait, ils ont toujours essayé d'apporter du contenu en plus. Là, sur Dying Light 2, c'est le cas, puisque il est assez connu maintenant le jeu. Au niveau côté américain, mais côté français, il y a quasiment personne à part moi et Bibouan, je crois, que j'avais partagé une fois sur la chaîne. Mais ouais.
Feel the same. So Dying Light 1, it remains unparalleled, immersing players in the chilling sounds of distant zombie cries and terrifying screeches. The sequel, on the other hand, it's good, but it's by no means perfect. It does have some plus sides to it. The distressing cries of people in need, desperate pleas for help, and chaotic screams. Gerard yelling that he's getting stung by a bee. It is really immersive. In certain aspects, Dying Light 2 nails it. In others, not so much. It just feels disjointed at times. Overall, because of how the nighttime was handled from the very beginning, Dying Light 1 nights just remain superior. I understand the rationale behind Techwine's decision to alter the night experience in response to player preferences, aiming to make it more accessible. However, despite these efforts, the unique and chilling atmosphere of the original Dying Light's nighttime just strongly resonated with players, and that diminished in the sequel here.
Ça c'est vrai.
On
a plus infectés dans le 2 que dans le 1. C'est logique. C'est moi je trouve ça normal.
And Dying Light 2 receives praise for its introduction of different infected types, including howlers, banshees, and revenants, adding depth and variety to the challenges that players face. In the original Dying Light, the combat experience against infected is noticeable for its impactful and weighty feeling. Swinging melee weapons delivers a remarkable sensation with each action.
Ça, je suis d'accord. Ça, c'est vrai.
The attention to detail extends to the physics and ragdoll effects in here.
Je suis d'accord.
Zombies stumble and react realistically to the player's movements. Tripping over, knocking into each other, and responding to their surroundings adds an extra layer of immersion. Unfortunately, Dying Light 2 actually falls short of this aspect.
Et ça m'énerve un peu de pas avoir ça.
The physics and ragdolls lack that same attention to detail. Techwine's seems to have prioritized an animation-heavy approach here, impacting the overall feel of gameplay interaction.
Ouais, le fait qu'il tombe pas, ça me termine aussi.
Ragdoll effects in Dying Light 2 contributes to a noticeable disconnect with satisfying gameplay. The game's emphasis on animations over nuanced physics can result in this polished gameplay experiences, highlighting a departure.
Merci aussi Jean et trop d'avoir les dieux.
While certain infected do have more consistent ragdolls and physics, such as the volatiles in Dying Light 2, but overall, at its current state, it's lacking well behind the original here. A bit more patching and updating could bring it up to speed. Now, I do want to go ahead and transition to one of the fundamental pillars of Dying Light, the combat system, which plays a crucial role in shaping the overall experience.
Là, je pense que je peux donner mon avis en vrai. Je préfère plus le combat du 2. Du 2, ouais, tellement. Puisque littéralement, tu peux faire pas mal de choses, ça je suis d'accord. Et les niveaux de combat, il y a tellement avec les animations, et moi j'adore ça, avoir des animations de combat, de faire en sorte que tu sois comme dans un film, j'adore ça. Donc pour moi, c'est le 2. Et le 1. Mais le 2 restera supérieur, même si le combat du 1 sont pas mauvais.
Dying Light 1, the combat with zombies is great. It is enhanced by the impressive ragdoll physics that we explored earlier.
Voilà, ça va aussi.
Battling the undead is deeply satisfying. It really gives you that sense of impact and realism here. However, when shifting the focus to combat against human enemies, it's actually quite the opposite. The combat experience with humans feels less refined and quite repetitive. While battling zombies showcases the game's polish with responsive reactions and great AI programming, the interactions with human enemies lack the same finesse. Their tendency to frequently block and engage in counterattacks, it just introduces a level of frustration to the player. It reveals that there's a noticeable imbalance.
Je crois que ça s'est bien amusé.
Like honestly, every single time I was forced into a section where I needed to fight humans, I just took my gun and erased them from this earth. Transitioning to Dying Light 2, a reversal occurs in the combat dynamics. Here, the focus on human combat takes center stage, showcasing well-crafted engagements and a much more polished experience. The encounters of humans, they feel more nuanced, strategic, and less repetitive compared to the original. It's quite funny how all the way back in the identity section of this video, we discussed that Dying Light 1 had a greater focus on the infected, while the sequel was more so on humans. The core gameplay combat loop further proves that point.
Ouais.
The absence of basic features like ragdolls and physics during zombie combat in Dying Light 2, it diminishes the engagement, creating an experience
des
it doesn't
différences
feel like a fully immersive zombie apocalypse, which was achieved
des
in
animations.
Dying Light 1.
Et moi, comme je dis, je
Dying
préfère
Light
celui
1,
du
the
2 que le
synergy
1.
between various elements contributed to a cohesive experience where every single aspect worked together seamlessly to create a believable zombie-infested world. Unfortunately, this seamless integration is just lacking in Dying Light 2. That's not to say it'll get there one day, but for right now, it's not there. Diving into the skills and abilities, an interesting observation emerges. Many skills in Dying Light 2 mirror those that were unlocked on day 1 in Dying Light 1.
Ceux de Dying Light 2, tout ce qui est en termes d'animation, etc. Le 2 éclate le 1. Par contre, ce qui est au niveau du gameplay, physique, etc. Le 1 éclate le 2.
Which honestly, it became the staple of parkour abilities that just weren't present in the OG. Alongside the drop kick for combat abilities, like drop kicking is just ridiculous in this game. It has no right being as good as it is in the sequel here. What? Tech1 was onto something here. Now, I do want to go ahead and analyze the depiction of gore in both games. We'll be examining the
gore
du... In the gut feeling update
ah
for
voilà,
2,
merci.
The gore system underwent a substantial overhaul to enhance its brutality. Personally, I believe both games have reached a level of equality in their gore systems. I think Dying Light 2 actually has a little bit of an edge just because nearly every single NPC and infected is able to be dismembered here, while in Dying Light 1, the options were a bit more limited. It is worth noting that prior to the update, the gore implementation in Dying Light 2 was shit. It was a joke, to be quite frank with you. As we mentioned earlier, Dying Light 2 was heavily focused on animations for a significant period, and that left the satisfaction of gore and brutality almost non-existent. It's essential to note that in comparison to both titles, neither of them reached to the level of gore as seen in games like Dead Island 2, which is just on a whole new level of intensity. Lastly, in the gameplay section, I do want to touch on co-op and PvP aspects. While co-op adds a tremendous dimension to
Alors, si vous êtes 1, ça passe. Si vous êtes 2, ça peut aller. Si vous êtes 3-4, c'est bugué à mort. Je ne rigole pas.
The co-op functionality in Dying Light 2 needs a substantial improvement to match the seamless experience provided by its predecessor, which benefited from 7+ years of support. So they have that going for it. I mean, Dying Light 2 just got a text chat. Nonetheless, when co-op functions smoothly in both games, it leads to hilarious and memorable moments, creating some of the best gaming experiences that I've had. It's one of those games where if you have the friends to play it, it will make it so much better than if you played it alone. It's not a necessity to play it with someone else, you'll just get more out of the experience. And also, of course, Dying Light 1 did have Be the Zombie, a competitive game mode that was perfect for endgame players.
J'aimerais trop un mode comme ça sur le Dying Light 2. Je pense que il y aurait beaucoup de personnes qui retourneraient sur le jeu pour le détruire, clairement.
I'm kidding. There's a very strong community still behind it. No such competitive game mode exists in Dying Light 2 at the moment. Dying Light 2 kind of got rid of modes because they had a stronger focus on story. Now, in the realm of these two games, the story
l'histoire du 1 éclate celle du 2.
as a backdrop to the immersive gameplay. As mentioned in my Dead Island 2 versus Dying Light 2 video, the narratives play a secondary role, with neither game designed to be a narrative powerhouse. However, a stark distinction arises when comparing how each game handles its storytelling. Dying Light 2 attempts to inject a sense of depth and player agency through a compelling narrative with the choices and consequences system. The execution of this falls flat. It leads to a very sluggish and dragged out experience that pales out to the swift pacing of the first installment, Dying Light 1, which mainly features a pretty generic story, but it does manage to strike a balance, allowing players to enjoy it for what it is. The narrative pacing in this story is super quick, and it employs familiar tropes reminiscent of other games in this time frame. It's not pushing.
Je suis totalement d'accord avec lui.
At all. And we already talked about Aiden Caldwell in Dying Light 2 in the beginning of this video, but with Kyle Crane, he starts out as your typical Black Ops military dude who's hired to do a job. And that's really his identity. It isn't until over time you start to see his struggles, what he stands for, and how he slowly pushes himself out of that typical generic hero. He has that charming and cocky wit to him that made him so beloved over time from the community. His character arc, it kind of flies through in the game. It isn't really until the following where we can see fully what this person was destined to be. The one where he wants to save as many people as possible and do the right thing. There's minimal room for resting. The storyline just hurtles forward with rapid fire action. However, where Dying Light 2 does shine is its character development. The characters such as
Comment ça, le développement des personnages est... Non, il est claqué au sol. Tous les personnages de Dying Light 2 sont oubliables. Tous. Il n'y en a pas un que tu retiens. No joke, la première fois que j'ai fait le jeu, je n'en ai senti aucun. Littéralement, aucun. Dying Light 1 m'a plus touché sur ça par la mort de Zéré, par la mort de Braken, par la mort de Jade, par ces 3 personnages principaux. Là, il n'y a rien. Non, là, je suis contre. Les personnages, rien n'est bien. Voilà, allez, bravo. Akon, ouais, voilà quoi, mais sinon.
This depth makes the characters more compelling to the relatively limited exposure and development of characters.
Ah, mais tout reste oubliable, hein. Mais là, non.
In the first game. In this aspect, Dying Light 2 succeeds creating a more memorable and engaging cast. Nonetheless, despite the character depth, other shortcomings in gameplay and surrounding elements contribute to an overall forgetting experience, leaving players more invested in character drama rather than the overarching narrative. A lot of what the story is aiming to do falls back on the identity aspect. The best way to describe these two and what they're aiming for is by discussing their peak, analyzing the pinnacle story missions that define them. Dying Light's final chase through the sewers, where the player is against time, propelled by the urgency of the game's antagonist and what he's planning to do. The player finds themselves deep in a volatile hive with bodies and infected everywhere.
C'est vrai,
this moment is heightened by a gripping
elle est excellente.
urging you to move forward, not out of actions of heroism or inspiration, but out of desperation. Every calculated jump in this mission is mainly out of terror and fear. Now, let's
C'est
go
vrai.
ahead and shift focus to
J'ai encore les mémoires
pivotal
de
mission,
la
scaling the
première
VC tower. This
la première fois que j'ai joué au jeu.
marked by inspiration and triumph. It represents the culmination of sacrifices made by characters met throughout the narrative. Similar to the sewers, you apply all of your knowledge and skills for this critical moment. Nothing else matters to you than ascending that tower. You want to get to the top to prove it to yourself and all the other people that you met on your journey that you can do it. Nothing else matters as you ascend the tower. It is a personal challenge to prove, unlike the fear-driven desperation of its predecessor. Dying Light 2 pivots towards motivation rooted in heroism. As you climb, swing, and jump, the goal is not personal escape, but it's a testament to the strength that you've gained. And you're doing it for everybody you met, except for Churro, that guy.
Ça me termine.
In essence, Dying Light 1 hones
Ça
in
me
on the
termine,
fear
bordel.
and grapples with the horror at the core of the
Il aime pas
zombie
Siron.
genre. Dying Light 2 shifts its focus
C'est vrai.
to the buried
Il est détestable,
hope
le personnage.
underneath a grim world, centering its narrative on
Mais,
strength and rebuilding a society. Both games, despite their thematic differences, they skillfully do resonate with the player to some degree. Now, I do want to go ahead and shift the focus to post-launch support and DLC for both of the Dying Light games here. They are significant factors to discuss. Dying Light 1 being released 8 years ago enjoyed 7 years of continuous support. It has a substantial amount of additional content when compared to Dying Light 2. Techland has indeed committed themselves to a 5-year support plan until 2027 for Dying Light 2, so they are here to stick around. What's worth mentioning is that 1 year into the life cycle of these games, Dying Light 1 had the Bozak DLC, Be the Zombie, on release. Granted, it was tied to a pre-order bonus for the longest time, which is another issue to discuss later. But almost exactly 1 year later, Dying Light 1 received Dying Light The Following alongside the Enhanced Edition. And The Following is considered one of the best expansions and pieces of content within the franchise. The Following was exceptional, introducing a wealth of new content, such as additional areas
The Following était excellent, d'accord?
The beloved Doom Buggy, new weapons, increased levels, a compelling story extension, all within the first year of release. And when you compare that to Dying Light 2, it's still waiting for DLC, which not much information has been given, aside from a few PR pics. Dying Light 2 has faced challenges in its post-launch content reception. The release of Bloody Ties DLC was met with a lot of critical responses, and right now, there seems to be a huge emphasis on purchasable bundles, which honestly is not something new to the franchise. When you compare and look at the data, you can see where the issues start to arise. Dying Light 1 had 22 paid bundles and 6 free ones. Meanwhile, Dying Light 2, after 2 years, has 20 paid bundles with more in the pipeline, indicating a different approach and perhaps a greater focus on monetized content with cosmetics and outfits and weapons compared to the
Confirme, je suis un
In
pigeon.
terms of free updates, Techland is dedicated to refining Dying Light 2 based on player feedback with regular monthly.
Par contre, on n'a pas eu le retour de Togay Facile, là, je suis pas content là.
Substantial improvements to the game's quality of life and also addressing major player requests. While some players express
Et dire qu'on n'a pas reçu les
updates should have been present at launch,
et dire qu'on n'a pas reçu.
the ongoing changes, including nods to the original game like the Night Update, indicate Techland's commitment to delivering the desired gaming experience for everyone involved. With Dying Light 2, Techland has fully embraced the collaborative mindset, actively seeking and incorporating player feedback to enhance the game collaboratively. They actively do playtests with creators and members.
Je suis d'accord. Ça c'est vrai. Pour je me rappelle le mode que ils avaient pour le parcours, ils avaient invité ONIZOMBIES, aussi Gigi, pas mal de créateurs de contenu. J'y ai pas été invité. Ça fait un peu chier, mais bon, j'ai fait avec quoi.
For seamlessly incorporating elements from those IPs into the game. However, with Dying Light 2's approach to events, it faces heavy criticism every single time because of their focus on bounties and grind rather than delivering a quality and engaging experience. Now, in conclusion, both Dying Light 1 and Dying Light 2 stand as commendable games showcasing exceptional parkour mechanics and engaging combat gameplay. Some games excel in different aspects. Dying Light 1, with its focus on infected, establishes a robust identity and benefits
Le zombie il est un peu bugué à gauche là.
attention to detail, physics, and ragdolls, providing a more immersive and polished gameplay experience. Dying Light 1 immerses players into a world of grim despair. The haunting soundtrack seamlessly complements this desolation, intensifying the emotional connection of the undead-infested environment. In contrast, Dying Light 2 transforms its world, infusing it with inspiration and heroism. The music empowers players to navigate the challenges ahead with a sense of purpose, reinforcing their role as a beacon of hope in society. Dying Light 2 forges its identity around
Talia, un bon personnage peut avoir une romance.
In these games, like we said,
vous savez quoi?
is not the main focus, but it's rather a background gameplay. But Dying Light 2 tries to add depth to a narrative consequences, but it falls short and it leads to a slow and drawn out experience when compared to the first game. Dying Light 1, while having a simpler story, it strikes a better balance, letting players enjoy it for what it is. Navigating the parkour landscapes in Dying Light 1 is undoubtedly enjoyable, but it doesn't match the verticality as showcased in Dying Light 2.
Je pourrais donner un avis quand Dying Light 2 aura eu ses 7 ans. Voilà.
And a world designed to enhance the vertical movement, featuring massive skyscrapers and structures absent from the original. While Dying Light 1 provides a satisfying parkour experience, the sequel takes it to new heights with its intricate system in a world that encourages free movement in breathtaking ways. Dying Light 2 faced criticism for creative decisions that didn't resonate with the community, prompting developers to revert certain aspects to align more closely with the original. A lot of their changes felt either very forced, rushed, or poorly executed in the beginning. And Techland now acknowledges these challenges, and they're actively working towards refining and enhancing Dying Light 2, aiming to achieve a level of polish that satisfied the player base in the original. But anyways, friends, that is the end of today's video, okay? I have said
Il a pas répondu à la question.
Bah,
c'est une comparaison.
Ok. And if you did enjoy this, please drop a like and a comment. Let me know your thoughts down below. I spent so much time on this video. I have no idea how long it's going to take me to edit this.
Bon, en tout cas, en vrai, je suis d'accord en partie sur lui. Je vous mettrai le lien de sa vidéo, bien sûr, en description, pas de souci à ça. Mais voilà, en vrai, je suis d'accord. Il n'a pas donné d'avis subjectif comme quoi Dying Light 1 ou Dying Light 1 ou Dying Light 2 sport à l'un ou à l'autre. Ça, c'est bien. Mais moi, personnellement, je ne donnerai pas mon avis. Donc, vous ne l'aurez pas. Peut-être plus tard dans cette vidéo, mais je pense que oui. Comme j'ai dit, je le redonnerai que quand Dying Light 2 aura reçu ses 7 ans ou ses fameux 5 ans de contenu. Donc, on verra clairement ce qu'il y aura à faire. Sur ce, moi, je vais vous laisser. C'était Pastra. Je vous dis à la prochaine. Peace.